Everyone, it's me, Alura, and welcome back to MetaMystics, where today we'll dive into the wonderful world of dreams and beyond. I'm super excited to go into this with you with a simpler spin, plus some cool insights about how sleep works, the psychology behind our dreams, and how they differ from out-of-body experiences and astral projection. I'll talk about some mysterious beings that I've met in these dream spaces because I've run into them. To make it real, I'll share some of my own personal experiences with dreams and tie it into how our minds process emotions and growth. Let's jump in. So how does sleep set the stage? Well, our brains go through different stages when we sleep. It's like chapters in a storybook, cycling every 90 to 110 minutes and happens about 4 to 6 times every night. It's crazy. And these dreams, they shape how our minds work through feelings and memories. So I want to break it down first in layman's terms for all of you, how dreams kind of start drifting out. So you start with a light sleep, and that's where you're drifting out. It's like zoning out into a cozy haze. Your body relaxes and your brain is actually slowing down. It lasts about 5 to 10 minutes, and you might see quick dreamy images like little snapshots of your thoughts. Now, the next stage is stage 2. It's a bit deeper. You're asleep now, but your heart slows and your brain has these little bursts called sleep spindles that help lock in your memories from the day. This stage is about half of your sleep's time and can spark light dreams. It's like the brain's filing away of the day's events. Stage 3 is deep sleep. This is a super deep zone where you're out cold. Your brain makes slow waves called delta waves, and your body heals itself. It really does. Muscles, immune system, and even emotions. Dreams here can feel very heavy and symbolic, like your mind is working through big stuff. Next is REM sleep. This is your dream central. It's where the magic happens. Your brain lights up like you're awake. Your eyes wiggle really fast. That's where we get REM, rapid eye movement. But your body's frozen so you don't act out your dreams. This is where you get those wild story-like dreams and time feels so stretched out. It's also where your brain sorts out emotions like calming fears or solving problems. Psychology. They say that these stages are for helping people keep balance. Dreams are supposed to process stress and fears and creativity, and they could be like a therapy session. Freud once thought this was about hidden wishes, where Jung saw them as deep symbols from the human psyche, but modern science says that they help us handle emotions and memories, which a little bit of all of them are true. But messed up sleep can really bother you. It can lead to anxiety or being foggy, where good sleep can help you grow stronger mentally. It's true. Now, in each level of sleep, it feels more intense. The sleep stages shape how they'll play out. So I think I'll go into this a little bit more so that you can see how I view the dream world and hear some of my own personal experiences. So for one thing, dreams are a whole other level of spirituality. I've talked about this before in a previous video, how dreams are very real. If your thoughts are made of light energy and your spirit is made out of energy, then everything you see is just imprinted into that light energy, because memories aren't physical manifestations. These are photographs that are taken with your mind and imprinted into the light that you take with you beyond you. And so this goes back to what I always say in referencing the scriptures about how Jesus said, store up for yourselves treasures in the heavens, not on earth, because it's very true. You can't take any of this physical nature with you. You could only take with you what you put inside. And so when you think about how the eyes work, how the mind works, it's such a fascinating thing. It's a subject I could go into on such an in-depth level that you would probably feel like you were taking some college level course, and then that wouldn't be fair to some who are just newly starting out in their spiritual journey as well either. But I do want to go in deep, so I'll try to speak in plain terms here and just say that when you go into vision, your eyes are just taking pictures all day. You're not actually seeing images. You're just taking in light. The light is going in through your eyes. It's sending a signal to the brain, and the brain is transmitting more signals to kind of figure out what it's supposed to be thinking or seeing there. Where do you think it's getting that information? It's getting it from what's programmed inside you through DNA, and it's true. Now, I'm not trying to say that we're robots or that we're a computer. What I'm saying is that we are something so complex in a living light structure of spiritual energy that I don't even think science will ever fully be able to prove or figure it out. But it's true. We are made of tiny little atoms and neurons and all of these cells, but really when you get down to that microscopic level, they're just energy too. And it reminds me much of like how when you look at Minecraft or you look at Sims and how you go up close to the TV and it's all just tiny little static dots of energy that make up color, but it also is transmitting information through a signal through the picture too. Well, your mind is working the same exact way. Your soul already comes here with information from its previous life. But like I've said in my book, your soul is made to forget what you knew previously in your last lifetime. And so you're taught brand new by being reborn and being put into a new vessel. Now you have new parents in a new location, and you're being taught that this is who you've always been, where you've always been, and you grow up believing that. So you don't really remember anything that you did prior to coming into this lifetime. Therefore, growing up, and as your parents are teaching you, and you're seeing pictures, you're seeing light through the new eyes that you see, you're now using your brain to tap into whatever data or information is there to tap into that's available physically because you are sent into a physical vessel for the physical experience. So it's ignoring the spiritual aspect. It's ignoring that element because you're taught that you're physical, you're in a new physical body with new physical parents, you've known nothing else before, this is all that you've known, and now you're here. So it's going to naturally, automatically go into computing that data of what you're hearing, seeing, learning, what you're experiencing through the genetics that you're given at birth. And that's why everybody has DNA. It's not just about what you're going to look like or your bloodline or your family. It's about the information that's passed down generation to generation through each family that you're born into, so that every soul that comes back for another life has an informational pattern to lock into, to tap into, to start again. So if that's the case, if that's true, then thinking about the dream world, people have tried to understand it on a level of psychology so many times before, but what they're missing out on is that it's not just about what you see in everyday life. Your dreams could certainly hold visuals or memories of lifetimes that you've lived long ago. Now, I've said many times in readings that I've even done for people that sometimes your dreams can hold a picture of a face that you might not remember, and some people confuse their dreams sometimes where they don't know the difference. They don't know whether they're dreaming about something from this lifetime or another, and they'll remember a face in their dream that they saw, and they'll say, I had a dream, but I've never seen that face before. But the point is that they don't know if it's a past lifetime experience or one that they've had in this life, because the mind has selective memory. As you grow up, you're imprinting the information that you want to remember, you're storing it into your mind, and then there's other information that also gets pushed to the back of your mind that you make yourself not think about anymore through trauma, or even just through your own mind's way of saying, well, this isn't significant information. So the data kind of falls to the subconscious and unconscious collection area and files it away. And that happens through sleep. It really does. Every day that you just turn the camera of your body, of your physical vessel off, and you go to sleep, you shut down and you just kind of take in that data for the day, even if you're not thinking about it, and it gets stored into the back of the mind. Every time you blink, information gets stored to the back of your mind. So I've had people come up to me and say, Alura, I had a dream about someone and I've never seen their face before. Is this my spirit guide? Or, is this someone that I knew in a past lifetime? And that's when I have to read deeper. I have to go in and say, well, let's take a look, because this could have been someone that you've seen when you were small and you just don't remember seeing them. You could have passed them on the street at 2 years old in your peripheral vision. And there's so many people that you could have seen when you were little growing up in your peripheral vision, and your mind sees it all, but you're not focusing on it, so you don't even know that you saw it. That's how logos work with subliminal programming. It's true. They put them in such a way that the mind doesn't even have to focus on it or look at it, but the mind knows that it's there and what it's looking at. And that's how deep this information goes in your body, in your genes. Yet, even still, all that you see, everything that you hear, every little thing is going into the brain, it's being stored, and then you go to sleep, it kind of holds it all in there for you, and some of it will come up in dreams. Dreams are an amazing place to explore, but everybody has their very own spiritual language. Like I said, you may not know of what you've seen being from the past or from this lifetime. And that's why it's very important to have someone to kind of help you guide through that. You can learn psychology, learn about the idea of what symbols mean through your dreams that way, but it may not be a deeper message for you per se, because maybe that's not the language of what your soul interprets or what your soul has experienced or seen, because you're not just here in this lifetime, you've lived so many others before. And it's amazing that you have. A lot of people get disappointed when I do past life readings and they hear me say that they've lived so many lifetimes prior to this one, because they think that living on earth is, shameful or something. And it's not, because you learn so much here on earth through everything around you that you grow. Some people won't grow. There's always that case as well too, where they get stuck in the repetitive cycles of life, where things just continually bring them down and they come back and they have to repeat those lessons, or they get worse and it piles up on top of them. But there are so many other people out there as well too, who do naturally end up growing through confronting different lessons, no matter how long it takes them, but they do end up getting to the point of growth at some stage. Now, I've had a lot of different experiences in out of body. A lot of people sometimes confuse what astral projection and out of body is, and they try to seem as if it's the same thing, or they confuse one for the other. And the case is that out of body is where your spirit can actually leave your body. You're no longer attached or associated. You're just floating around into that dreamscape in an area within the spiritual veil all around you. Whereas astral projection is a little different. You're projecting into your dream and you're exploring it where it feels very real. Lucid dreams can be likened to astral projections, but they're definitely not the same. A lucid dream is just where the dream is very vivid and you remember it. It felt real and you remember the details of it pretty clearly, but astral projection itself is very different in that you do have a little more control over interaction, and you're not attached to your body being within it. You do have a silver thin cord that connects you from your spirit that's kind of floating out in the ether to the physical body through what I like to call ectoplasm, so to speak. I know that's kind of like a Ghostbuster term here, but it's true. And then OBE, out of body experience, is where you've just kind of gone off and now you're in a whole other place, and it's so real, it's so vivid. There's not always a lot of control of what's going on because you're out of your body, you're in the spiritual veil, and so whatever's happening there is whatever's happening there. And there's so many different places that you could go to that are within that astral level, because the dreamscape, out of body, and astral zones are right beyond the physical experience of life. So they kind of exist within that 4D element, and you're exploring there, but you are safer because in astral projection, you're just in your own dream there. You're still kind of attached to your body there, but in out of body experience, you're not. You're out of your body. You're actually in the spirit world floating around, and this is where you're going to actually see spirits. You're going to see spiritual beings. And this is something that I do, even just channeling, because sometimes I can't just get the information to come to me within that lens. I need to actually go after it. And so I will just kind of sit down, go into meditation. I don't really need to be asleep to do it. And I'll just leave my body and detach and go off where I need to go, kind of projecting it using both elements of astral projection and out-of-body experience together to get myself where I need to go within the spirit world to obtain the information that I want to get. But in terms of dreams, that's a whole other place. Dreams are the embodiment of your mind. But again, at what level? Is this coming from the subconscious? Or is this coming from something that's bothering you consciously today? Do you overthink before you go to sleep, which is also something very important to look at, because if you do, then you're probably creating your own dream. That's why I always try to do guided meditations with people to teach them how to do astral projection, because if you can at least start to kind of project the landscape that you want to experience first, you'll have a better time at it in getting to the lucid aspect of dreaming. And then when you do learn how to actually project, you're projecting into a dream that you created yourself that's more comfortable and has more detail of what you can emotionally handle. Because when you are out of body, it's a very scary place. I've seen so many different places out of body beyond the veil in the spirit world that, you know, there's all different types of entities that exist there. I've seen, as many of you know, shadow beings, and I've seen those in my body. People claim that sleep paralysis is the cause of seeing shadow people, and this is very untrue. It is very, very untrue, because I'm not asleep when I seen them. I've seen them since I was a little girl, and I wasn't sleeping on most occasions that I have seen them, although I have seen them when I have gone out of body and experience as well. One time I can talk about was when I was 2 years old, and I don't know if I've told this story in my blog or in my videos before, but I was 2 years old and I had just started communicating with the Lord, and that's why I know so very much that it's true that when you begin your journey and trying to connect with a greater power and going toward the divine, there's always something very negative that tries to hold you back, and it will, because in this world they don't want you to have any parts of that. They want you to focus on everything around you. They want you to be a part of the physical material nature of things. And that's why they're so heavy about putting subliminal messages in music, subliminal messages in commercials, television, why they have created internet to read and scan your thoughts, to kind of program, you know, the whole entire internet to meet everybody's like desires and expectations, to make you focus on not only this reality now, but the virtual reality that they're creating around you. And that's just going back and forth into your mind, from the computer to your mind. And then they don't even care what's created on the outside in this reality anymore. That's why it's falling apart, you know, because they're trying to pull your mind here, you know, to distract you from what's really going on out here, which is that the world is falling apart. You know, Earth is hurting. There's so many natural disasters, so many diseases. Governments are falling apart. Politics is falling apart. Solar flares, earthquakes, so much. And they know that something even worse is going to happen later. And so they're trying to pull everybody's attention here because they don't want you connecting to the divine. They don't want you to get better. They want you to keep feeding their pocket even more greedily now. And in order to do that, they have to pull you out by your lusts, by your desires. And so, you know, they put out propaganda, they put out new laws to kind of trick the mind and get people on board with certain things. And then they take it away from you to make you rampant and angry, to want to do it more later as another form of manipulation. And then they put it even more in television, even more in music, to put it in your mind even further, and so many people are falling for it. And now they're creating virtual reality helmets where you can just live in and not even worry about this life or this space. You know, first it's the phones, and now it's going to be living in the helmets. But all of that goes into your mind, and that's the new consciousness that they're creating within you, which is keeping you back from being able to live in that enlightened space. So when I was 2 years old, that's when I really got a taste of that being true, about how they target the people that really want to be a part of something greater. Because I was just starting to awaken and connect with my creator at that age. And he was speaking with me, visiting with me. And I remember I went to sleep one night, and I was lying in my bed, and I wasn't fully asleep because as a little girl, I was always very spiritually sensitive. I would pick up on different things. If I seen a ghost or felt a different energy or something was happening, I would just be alert and vigilant. And I would lay there like that until I got too tired. I couldn't keep my eyes open because I could feel everything. I could even feel what was going on in the apartment downstairs. And I was just sitting there, and my father and mother were in their bedroom, and something just gave me this dreadful feeling to look over to my left, and my closet doors were over there. And I looked over, and I seen something out the corner of my eye, like looking there like that. And so I just turned my full head and looked, and I seen a hand, pitch black, coming out of the closet and like kind of beckoning me, motioning me to come toward it. And I just screamed, but I couldn't even get the scream out. I was so paralyzed in fear, just sitting upright in my bed, screaming with no sound coming out, waiting for my father to come to my rescue. And when I finally did get the little squeal out, he came in, he's like, "What's wrong?" And I said, "There's someone in my closet." And that's the only way my mentality as a child could process it, because I had never seen something like that before, not yet. So my father looked inside the closet and there was nothing there. And people are not as spiritually awake if they're not as psychic as you. And so he was telling me, "You had a bad dream, there's nothing to be afraid of." And I understand, his need to want to reassure me, but I knew what I saw. And so I wasn't having it, and I made him allow me to sleep with them. But that wasn't the end of it. I've seen them so many times. Another clear aspect of an example I can give you was back in 2014. I was living in a little town down in a place called Lindenwald, and my daughter and I were staying up really late, and I had just started, doing my adventures on YouTube, and I was really proud. And I had already had so many other experiences before, but this is just another one that comes off the top of my head. And I'm sitting there on the sofa, kind of, sitting cross legs, crisscross applesauce on the sofa. And I was taking some pictures. And back then I didn't have any money. I was really struggling, just trying to kind of come up in my world of my work and my job. And I had an old flip phone. And I thought, I'm going to take a couple pictures and post them to Google+. I don't know how many of you remember Google+, right? So I took a couple pictures and I posted them, and I just closed the flip phone and I look up, and straight ahead of me is our window. And the curtains were all open because it was a nice summer evening, and the window was up kind of rather high. It was like 10 foot off the ground, because we were up on a platform when you come in the front door coming into the living room. And the window was up a little bit higher than that. And so standing, the window was probably up to my waist, and I'm 5'3". But if you were to go outside, it would have been around 10 feet in its total height. So it was really tall. And so we didn't really have any cause for fear of anyone breaking in, unless, somebody had to get a ladder and we would hear kind of clinkering or clamoring against the house. And I'm always awake, or my dad was a light sleeper because he was in the Army. And so we didn't really close the blinds up at the time. We locked the doors, of course, but we keep the windows open in the summer. And so as soon as I closed that flip phone, I looked up, I was looking at like a dark, solid being with no facial features, no eyes, standing in the center of the window looking at me. And I knew it was looking at me. It wasn't a person. You could feel the intensity of this entity, and it wasn't a shadow. It was like a physical, solid person, and you could see the physical 3D nature of their body, of their face, of their form. And I just was so scared to death, because I had had so many encounters with these things, but they had never gotten any easier. They always bring this feeling of doom, unlike anything you'll ever experience before. This is nothing like a horror movie. There's nothing that you can actually put into words to describe what it feels like coming face to face with something like that. And so I just froze, and I was so scared that the hairs went up on the back of my neck, and I thought, oh my God, there's another interdimensional being. And I couldn't get myself out of the crisscross applesauce sitting position to move, because I was so scared. I was just waiting for it to leave. And I was wide awake. I was truly wide awake. I wasn't falling asleep. I was straight taking pictures. And I just looked, and it was there, and it was so terrifying. And however many times, there's so many number of times, it's innumerous how many times I have encountered these throughout my lifetime. And it's always when I'm trying to do something, spiritual or deep. It always feels like there's some watchful energy or presence. But
there have been a number of times, yes, where there was actually somebody standing there. Now, once I actually seen a YouTube channel, I think it was Slapped Ham, that was playing a video of like spooky things that had happened. There was a little girl in a tent, and you could see how she was kind of filming herself playing in the tent. And I seen this shadow go across, and the fear that the little girl had, I recognized. So I knew she had seen something very similar to what I'd seen growing up, and she was wide awake too. And the fear and the paralysis was there. She couldn't get out of there fast enough to go run and get help. The camera falls over, and you could definitely feel the intensity and energy of that fear. But it was definitely similar, and so that's something that I've experienced here when not asleep in this reality, and also have encountered them when I've crossed over into the spiritual realm as well too. And that's because once you get out of body, you're going into the spiritual veil. What do you think exists there? I mean, it's not heaven right here. Heaven is up in the higher dimensions. It's where divinity and perfection dwell. And so when you're leaving the body and you're going into that space, this is where everything exists, like negative things that have been manifested because of people focusing consciousness and intent on it. This is where evil, lower vibrational spirits live. This is where negative thought vibrations, wavelengths, and patterns exist. People's fears exist here, and dreams overlap that landscape. And so people's nightmares and upsets and traumas and memories it's like a database of all of that in that collective. And then there are actual spiritual residents that exist in that space as well too. So that's why I really do highly recommend taking my Heaven and Hell course, because it's a wonderful way to learn this a little bit more in depth than one video can provide. But dreams are so much more than just dreams, because here it's the filing system for your memories in this life. And if you can awaken and become more enlightened, you can start tapping into even deeper, even further into the nature of your higher self's memories, and learn to differentiate with maybe some help and some guidance between what is actually a memory from this life or a memory from your last life. Some people would like to believe, one or the other on their own, and that's fine too. But it's always good to have help and to learn about what your mind is trying to tell you about your life. Now, another thing about dreams, which is really cool, is that your angels and your spiritual guides can use them as a way to communicate. They know what's in your mind and your database. That's why I say it's so easy for people to be so spiritually influenced in this world, because your mind is full of wavelengths, thought patterns, and made of light that holds data, holds memories, holds pictures, and that exists within your DNA too. And so spirits that don't have a physical body, they thrive off of that. That's what they live on, is that energy. That energy is in the air all around you, and they gravitate toward those wavelengths that kind of match your own. When you're feeling down, they're like, oh, this is someone that I can manipulate more. And they know right where to go inside your thoughts, just kind of coming into your aura, into that mental layer, to kind of find a way to pull a memory or something upsetting out to bother you and feed into that even more. And that's why a lot of people don't understand the idea of possession, because you don't have to have a spirit living inside of you to be possessed. They can just come right into your mental energy, pick out your thoughts and fears and upsets, and get into your mind, especially when you're not feeling good enough and something inside you just saying, you know what, you're not good enough today, you're just not gonna make it, you're never gonna be anything, nobody loves you. And that's not your own thoughts, especially if the day before you're feeling good. So I think that another thing that people should learn is how to learn the difference between their own thoughts and what are provoked spiritual interferences as well. And getting through all of that, sifting through all of that, is kind of like doing shadow work. It's a part of shadow work, which is a very heavy, extensive part of the spiritual awakening process. But once you start to work through those things, you learn your own spiritual language, you start to understand what your own thoughts are trying to tell you, or your spiritual guides, and then you start to also experience things from memories that existed in past lifetimes as well, which is important, because knowing who you were, who you've been, is an element of your eternal spirit. You're not just this one person always, and people have been taught to forget all of that, and that it's not important, and they're taught to focus so much on now. The dreamscape is a landscape. It certainly is. It exists in the fourth dimension. There are 4 levels to it. And once you kind of get up to that last level, you're now entering into the 5th dimension, which is a whole other place. But this is where dreams exist, fears, memories, as well as there being trauma, spirits, the deceased that kind of get lost in transition exists in that spiritual aspect as well too. And so it's a very heavy place, and there's so much there, and that's why it's a very difficult space as a psychic or spiritualist to understand if you aren't trained at a higher dimensional level already. And that's why I always say, if people are going to tamper around in exploring the psychic world, know who you're dealing with, what you're dealing with when you start to do that. But you have to work with only divine spiritual essences. You know, going off into the darker places just attracts more entities like what I described in that shadow realm of those interdimensional beings that are shadow beings. These are very heavy, very strong, very powerful energies that they bring, and they have different types of forms of consciousness that they bring with them too. And you know, people don't know exactly what to make of all of this. I know it sounds very science fiction or whatnot, but they don't always look human. They do have animalistic features, because this is where everyone kind of morphs into, you know, a space where anything goes, you know, and it's a very scary place. Next time you go into your dreamscape, be aware to allow yourself to feel. Make sure that you rest. Make sure that you don't overthink. Try to clear your mind and just lay back and relax. I suggest prayer before sleep, just praying to, you know, the heavens about your worries and trying to be positive about it and asking what you hope for the next day really does help your mind to kind of bury some of the stress and anxiety so that you can have a better dream experience if you're going to remember it. And then just drift off into a nice sleep. Make sure you have some nice music on in the background that's very heavenly, and you should be able to produce some really good pictures that'll start coming up, and just kind of go into those pictures. And then once you do, your deeper sleep will then send you the rest of the way, and who knows, you might even astral project there and remember more. But as far as out-of-body experiences go, you kind of got to learn how to do that. That's a very difficult task to maneuver, but we'll talk about that more in another video. Would you like to know more about the different spiritual beings that I've run into throughout my spiritual journey? If so, drop a comment below or share one of your best dream experiences that you can remember. I would love to hear your thoughts, and thank you for watching. Bye everybody, and until next time.